Welcome to The Passion Pod with your host, Chris Johnson. Thanks for joining us. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the feature presentation.
Welcome back, friends. Today we're at Skate Park at Tampa. I actually flew down to Inglewood to come to Skate Park at Tampa to do an interview with a different artist who got stuck because his visa didn't allow him into the country. So we'll make that happen another day, and I made the trip anyways. Here I am at the skate park I've never been to, played it in every video game, and saw this guy walking around. And I was like, wait a second, I think I recognize who this is. I think I watched him in a skate video for like Tony Hawk's company a long time ago. So welcome to the show, professional skateboarder Willy Santos.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Chris. Yeah.
I'm really glad that I saw you and actually recognized you because I haven't seen you in a video in quite a while.
Okay.
When was your last video part that you put out?
There was, it was on the Riot channel, and it was called Connect the Dots. So it was like through Birdhouse kind of a thing, and that was in 2015.
Okay, so you disappeared for a little while as far as being front and center, but you're doing other things behind the scenes anyways in skateboarding.
I'm not producing video parts, but I'm always skating. If you happen to go on my Instagram, you'll see me skateboarding still.
Wonderful. I try to put clips up periodically. I got one earlier today at the park just to show all the kids back home like I did indeed skate the park. How can people best follow you, see what you do? Is Instagram kind of the best spot? What's your handle?
Pretty much Instagram, a little bit Twitter, and Facebook.
Sure.
I do a little bit on TikTok, but not too much.
Yeah, I think what you're supposed to do is put 90% of your energy into one and then 10% to just kind of distribute. But I'm really bad about it too. It's just Instagram. And your Instagram is just Willy Santos?
Yes, Willy Santos. And then there's also Willy's Workshop, which is my board company that I do.
Yeah, so tell me about that a little bit, because as you move from pro skateboarding, a lot of times what people don't realize is this glamorous life of pro skateboarding where there's not that much money to be made. All of a sudden you're 30, you hurt your knee, and you're like, well, okay,
so
what do I do?
With Willy's Workshop, it originally was a skateboard shop, barber skateboard shop, in fact.
Combination.
And
cool.
yeah, so it started like just right before 9/11.
Wow.
And then we closed probably in 2013, I believe. And then we continued still doing Willy's Workshop, but as a brand.
Yeah.
And I did that video part with Birdhouse. So I think I left Birdhouse like in 2016. And in fact, this year is the 30-year anniversary for Birdhouse. Wow. And I saw Tony actually like a few weeks ago before coming here. I was over at his vert ramp. I was working with Menace Des, and I just happened to text him the day before, and I was kind of like, oh, he must think I'm stalking him because I just happened to be coming into his office right now. And then he came up to me and said, hey, Willy, I'm sorry, just been super busy as he's Tony Hawk.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, we're gonna still do what we had planned, and what he had planned was, for it being the 30-year anniversary for Birdhouse, he wanted to reissue some of my boards.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so pretty excited about that. And so technically Birdhouse started in 1992. Yeah. But it was like the year was ending of 92. So it was like full force 93. So he's like, Willy, we're going to do it next year. So 2023, we're going to be, so you'll be able to see some of my classic boards from Birdhouse, like the Three Frogs. Yeah.
So tell me how that even came to be, because you were the first AM along with Andrew Reynolds, right? Do I have that right as far as Birdhouse?
No, so I turned pro in 1991.
Okay.
And it was for GNS.
Yeah.
Gordon and Smith, a company out in San Diego.
They were huge at the time.
Oh yeah, huge. Like, I'm talking like older skaters, but like Chris Miller, Rob Dyrdek rode for him, Dwayne Peters, Dwayne Petrie, many top pros that rode for them, and skateboarding was starting to die at the time when I had turned pro in '91, and I think I probably had like 4 or 5 pro models on GNS, and I met Tony skating a schoolyard in San Diego, and at that time I was still amateur. And he came up to me and was like, hey, if you want to ride for Powell Peralta. So this is, before Birdhouse. Yeah. But I was happy with riding for GNS. And it wasn't like I already knew I was going to be turning pro for GNS. And then maybe 2 or 3 years later, I come home and my dad's like, Tony Hawk called. And then I called him up, and then that's when he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be leaving Powell Peralta. I'm going to start a new brand. He didn't even know the name of the company. And I want you to be involved. And Jeremy Klein was involved. Right. And then shortly Steve Berra as well.
Yeah.
And then when that year we came out with that video Feasters, which you could see on YouTube, it was on VHS tape. And Tony is like, hey, we need some amateurs on this team. So I was like, okay, well, Andrew Reynolds, he rode for GNS.
Yeah.
So it was him, and then also Matt Beach, if you remember.
Yeah,
Matt
I remember
Beach.
him. Yeah.
Yeah,
He did that coffin grind for his ender in that
yes, in the
Transworld video.
Transworld, yeah. So Matt's a champ, and of course Andrew's incredible.
Right.
So that's how Andrew was on Birdhouse and Matt Beach.
What was pro skateboarding like in '92? Like, because it's not what like the Nigel, let's drive these fancy cars. There wasn't money in it, especially when like industry was kind of dying at that point in time. It seemed like, and I started skating in like '99, but still, I grew up on a lot of those videos. I've seen a lot of them, anyways.
Yes.
And it was like if you were on TV, which is still today's thing, that's where the ad dollars come through. But they didn't have street skateboarding contests at all at that time that were like heavily televised. What you watched was X Games Vert. That was like the big thing.
Right. So yeah, like you're talking about cars. Tony, like he was trying to entice me, like, hey, I'll give you my Honda Civic.
Sick.
But then it ended up I got a Honda Accord. He gave me a Honda Accord to get on Birdhouse. And at that time, World Industries, that whole camp over there, they were also courting me to get on there. Like Mike Chernowski, Rodney Mullen, Steve Rocco, they came over, like took me out to dinner. Like, so I had to weigh it, like Tony Hawk's company or with these guys over here. And I know these guys were like incredible what they do, the marketing and everything, but somehow my heart felt better with Tony Hawk. And I rode for Birdhouse for like almost 25 years.
Yeah, well, and people like to work with people that they like, though, and that really is a big thing. It's all personalities and that kind of networking in a good way. And when you meet somebody, as far as any interview I've ever seen of Tony Hawk or anyone referring to Tony Hawk, he sounds like the nicest, most professional, just coolest person that you can trust. Like there's just that energy about him. So I could see why you would do that.
Tony
versus
is incredible.
Rocco has had kind of the opposite. Like this is going to be wild. You don't really know.
Yeah, it could have been wild.
Right. You don't really know what's coming. So what did you
but
actually?
Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
Like even before Birdhouse. So I mentioned Rob Deerdick.
Yeah.
So Alien Workshop, right?
Yeah.
So I was supposed to be one of the original writers for Alien Workshop, because if you go back in history, all those guys were writing for GNS.
Oh.
Yeah. So I even got a package, but I was just like, oh, they moved to Ohio.
Right.
The team manager, Sarge, Chris Carter, because he was in San Diego, not originally, but he moved out there to do GNS.
Okay.
And then I was just like, oh, this is crazy. Like, you're moving to Ohio to do a skateboard company. And like, I was only like 13.
Yeah.
And skateboarding really seemed like it was in California.
It was at the time.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to stick it out with GNS, so I didn't go to Alien Workshop. So probably, because I think Alien started in 90 or 90, right around the same time.
Sure.
Yeah, so I ended up on Birdhouse.
Yeah, crazy. So how did life change then when you became pro? Because you were already pro, but you transitioned to Birdhouse. You went from a very established company to a brand new company. Granted, there was plenty of momentum behind it.
Yeah, Per Willander was involved with it
Right,
too.
exactly. So like, how did you just trust? Were there agreements of like, hey, we're gonna be able to pay you when this thing takes off? Just believe in the situation?
Tony, I got the Honda Accord, the used Honda Accord. It was Cindy, his ex-wife's car in high school at the time. Like, he got I got her car.
But you don't pay your bills with a used Honda Accord.
No. Tony was good. Like I got my checks when I did.
Sure.
Yeah.
What did it look like as far as like mentality of what you're going to be doing? Because at that point in time, especially, there weren't mega millions in money. There still isn't really in skateboarding for the vast majority of professional skateboarders. Right. But was your plan? Were you just naive in the time of like, I'm going to skate forever?
No.
And it's just going to work?
When before graduating, my mom, my dad were like, oh, maybe you could look into radiology, and I did. I sat with the counselor and kind of looked at it, and then. Then eventually it was like, oh shoot, I'm graduating high school, and then the very next day I'm going on a Birdhouse tour for a month. Yeah. And so I was on all these tours every year.
Sure.
So I never did the radiology. I never went to college skateboarding.
Right.
It was my life. So.
At what point was it that you started to realize your professional career is slowing down? Where do I want to spend my time and energy?
Well, yeah, my skateboarding was still huge for me. and I knew that I had to fall back onto something. So that's where it was like, okay, I'm gonna do Willy's workshop.
And that was you and somebody else? 'Cause
My
you weren't
wife.
cutting hair. She was cutting hair?
No. Well, originally there was this shop that a buddy of mine called Cafe, and it was down south in San Diego. So it was him and his dad were barbers.
Yeah.
So eventually, I parted ways, and then a year later or something like that, I opened up Willy's workshop, and then I hired a barber to be in there. So I never cut the hair,
Sure.
but I was in there. So my wife, it could have been called Shilly's workshop.
Sure. Was it just because it was a continuation of something that already existed with the barbershop thing, or was
Yeah,
it?
it's kind of like, okay, this seems like a great thing. You come in, buy a skateboard, get a haircut.
Yeah. Well, and in the skateboard industry, everyone knows there's no money. So, like, how are you going to pay the bills? It's really hard off exclusively skateboards, especially in California, where the rent for everything is just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it's through the roof. Yeah.
So, how long did Willy's workshop stay open as
I think
an
it was
actual
like
store?
13 years, something
Oh,
like
a
that.
really
yeah,
long
so
time.
It was
Okay.
a while. Yeah.
What was it
Yeah.
that made you close it officially? What
Well,
was the trigger?
the housing market was bad. It was just
What
starting.
year was this? This 2010 timeframe, or?
Yeah, 2012 or 13, I forget.
Sure,
Yeah,
okay.
how time flies. So
Yeah.
it was around then. Yeah.
And then
So yeah, it was kind of like I was still going on tours, but then also like I needed to because of the money like going really bad there.
Right.
I was spending a lot of time in the shop to
Right.
help it to stay afloat, and then eventually like, oh, we gotta close up shop. It's just
Yeah.
way too much
So
to handle.
when you opened it, were you not
Yeah.
really there all that crazy much then? What made
Yeah,
you want to
probably
do
the
it?
first like 5 or 7 years is so much traveling.
Sure. Why
Yeah.
did you even want to do it then? Just because you?
Oh, my wife was the one that was handling it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was a home base then still, because
Yes.
otherwise I'm like, why would you even want to deal with how? Like every time I travel and I leave, and my employees are fantastic, and like shout out Mikey, he's the best. But still, there's that concern when I leave, and I'm like, am I even making money after I'm paying for all these things? It's just a
Right.
huge headache.
Yes.
You know, and it's still
Yeah.
worth it because that's my home base,
Yeah.
and I think I'll always be in the shop. But it's hard. I imagine if you're traveling the country, like, do I really want to take on a whole extra business? Because there's a lot that's involved in it, and there's a big risk that's involved in it too.
Yes,
A lot of
absolutely.
things can potentially go wrong.
So yeah, we're blessed that like we're still continuing Willy's workshop. So like other skate shops, we got it in Japan, Philippines, and so it's Korea
Yeah.
of the brand Willy's workshop. And then I also, maybe you're not familiar, I do couch curbs. It's the parking block pillow. So they got it here in the spot.
Yeah.
There's a shop in St. Petersburg that carries the couch curbs as well. So yeah, it looks like a parking block, but it's
Yeah.
a pillow. So yeah, it's
Oh,
really cool.
I want to know more about the professional career days. You mentioned to me off mic a second ago talking about X Games.
Yes.
I didn't know that you skated the first X Games. I
Yeah,
thought
so
X
that-
Games
that-
started as
that-
just vert. I didn't even realize they
No,
had
yeah,
park.
it was in Rhode Island, and
Why Rhode Island?
I don't know. I guess they were able to pay for the venue.
I suppose. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was in 1995, and there was Chris Sen, who got first place.
Yeah.
Tony Hawk, who got second in the street. Yeah, I'm talking about the street course.
Yeah.
And then if I would have made my frontside flip over the hip, I would have probably got second place, but I got third place in the first X Games. And so yeah, you're talking about X Games, and you're talking about money, and I believe that one I either got $300 or $400 for third place.
Whoa.
Yeah. That's how it was, and I'm sure ESPN was like hyped that like, oh yeah, we'll pay for this contest.
Well, I'm sure. In comparison to the contracts they're paying for every other nationally televised
yeah.
thing.
So we were, it was in the moment. We someone had to be guinea pigs, and we did it. And,
Sure.
I don't regret it, but that's the way it was.
That's funny. It's just
Yeah.
a funny story to be able to look back upon, for
Yeah.
sure. Is that at the time frame where Tony Hawk was trying to be all street? Because he definitely
No,
was
he
in the
juggled
streets
both.
for a minute.
Yeah, what time period you're talking about? That was when he was filming for Feasters when he first
Yeah.
started Birdhouse.
Yeah,
and
okay.
Tony could definitely hit the streets.
Yeah, you said you met him in a park where
Yeah,
in
at a schoolyard
He
in,
was skating street at the time,
Yes,
and
yeah,
you
he
just
w-
ran into him.
Yeah, I was like, oh shoot, there's Tony Hawk skating at my local schoolyard, and he was out there to shoot a Tracker Trucks ad, and then so I watched him skate, and then he 5-0 grind down the handrail, like it was probably a 5-stair handrail.
Yeah.
And then that was the ad for the Tracker ad, and then after he was done skating, I was like, oh, he's done, and I was like, I started skating myself, and I didn't really know that he was actually watching me skate. and then I guess he liked what he saw.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, is that kind of how everything worked industry-wise back then? Because
well, if I rewind back, we were talking about GNS. So Chris Carter, my buddy John Sapienza, the big camcorders VHS to film my Sponsor Me tape, and I only made one Sponsor Me tape, and I was about to. It was like, am I going to give it to H Street, or maybe another local company called GNS? So I sent the only tape that I had to GNS. And Henry Hester was helping with the company at the time, and then Sarge was stepping in there. So they saw the video, and they called me up and like, hey, you want to go street skating? So then I took them out to my local spots that I would skate. So it was kind of like a tryout. Like they were just like, oh, let's see him in person. And then I got on the team.
But I mean, that's still, to this day, they still kind of do that with Flow Kids, right? They'll bring them out on a random trip to see if they vibe with everybody else, right? So I mean, that still exists to a certain degree.
But you don't have your footage only on one tape.
You didn't make a copy of the tape?
Yeah, unfortunately, I just...
So what would have happened if they just didn't respond, you just lost all the footage?
Yeah, I would have lost all the footage and started all over.
Well,
and maybe the footage was I don't know, 4 minutes? I don't even really remember.
And there's nowhere to even find that footage, I imagine, at this point.
I tried to look for it, and then they lost it. So it's long gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk the business side again a little bit more, though. You mentioned you do couch curbs.
Yes.
And where did you get the idea for that, besides everyone likes the slappy curbs?
So my buddy JJ, who's my partner, he had this pillow, and it had a picture of a parking block. And I was like, oh, you want me to, like, try and push this on my social network, see if something will people attract to it.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, let me get back to you. And then eventually he came back to me like a month or two later or something, and he had the couch curb.
Huh.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. And then like we would show our kids and then other people that skateboard, and they're like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've done collaborations with Dogtown, New Deal, Chris Pastres. So it says no parking on the parking block. It's red.
Yeah.
But it looks kind of like written over it. It said no racism.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
He still owns Stereo? Still involved in Stereo?
Yeah, Chris Pastres. Yes.
Yeah.
He is,
okay.
yeah.
So how did you get? You said that you sell internationally. I can't imagine how difficult that is to like actually line up and get figured out as far as selling boards and stuff.
the shipping can be hectic. Yeah.
Right. So why did you want to? Because you're not in. How many shops are you in? Do you have any idea as far as like the skateboards?
Oh yeah, I don't know the exact number, but throughout San Diego, across the United States.
Right.
Yeah, so,
at what point though did you just decide you even want to try to go international?
Oh, I mean it was actually pretty easy because I would go on tours like to Japan. Yeah. And my buddy had a distribution, so he's like, oh, can I distribute Willy's Workshop? And at the time when I would go on tours there, I was writing for Birdhouse.
Oh,
But originally he wanted to distribute Birdhouse, but some other distributor was doing it. So he was like, oh, can I do Willy's Workshop? So it worked out there.
Logistically, how does it work with the boards themselves, though? Do you have them made somewhere else?
Yeah, it's made in San Diego. Yeah.
Even the ones that are sold in Japan are...
Yeah. So it's shipped. So my buddy Go Ueda, he has stuff that he ships anyways from San Diego, so it just goes with the shipment.
I suppose, but still, wouldn't that kind of take your entire profit margin away?
No, well, he has it figured out, so it's all good.
I'm just, because I've like, even just me shipping my own passion branded merchandise, if I want to ship a t-shirt to Europe,
right? Yeah.
It kind of like kills everything with it. So what are you doing here? Why are you actually at Skate Park Tampa?
I got two team riders, Corey Escobar from San Diego. He's competing this weekend. And then also Jake Mills, who lives like just right near St. Pete. So I came out here to support with them.
How many people ride for the company? And nowadays they don't send you videotapes, right? Do they just Instagram you, or how's that even happen?
Pretty much. But there's this guy Mark Fernandez in the Philippines that's wrapping up a video part, so we're pretty excited. It will just go like on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah. And
so he's Filipino.
You just connected with him via socials, or how did that happen?
Yeah, through social. So other than Willy's Workshop, I also coach. So I'm sure you've heard of Sakura Yosuzumi, who won the Olympics. In the bowl.
Yep.
Where we're at like right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, she used to ride for Willy's workshop, and then eventually like I could only do so much, so she started riding for Pal Peralta.
Yeah.
So even with her transition going to Pal Peralta, I still work with her.
Right.
And she won the Olympics. I remember like that year, like even seeing Neil Mims here. He's like, hey, Willy, Sakura's going to win the Olympics. And I'm like, dude, don't jinx it. But sure enough, she did.
So how do you connect with and then start coaching? Was she in San Diego?
She's Japanese. And remember my buddy, Go Ueda?
Yeah.
So how I connected with her, she was coming to California and she wanted to skate in San Diego. And then my buddy goes like, oh, come meet, can you spend the day with Sakura and her mom?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so we met up at a local skate park in Rancho Penasquitos, and I was just like watching her skate. I'm like, oh my gosh, this girl's incredible. And I think she was probably only 15 or something. Yeah, she was really young.
Yeah.
And then because she rode for Workshop for like 2 years or something, and the tricks are in English.
Right.
So when she was, and then we went to another park, and then like I was giving her tips, and her mom's like, oh, you would be a great coach. And then my wife and I were like, oh, after meeting them and hanging out with them, we were always like, it'd be rad to get a girl skater on the team.
Yeah.
And then I asked my buddy Go, and she's like, yeah. And then after her being in the U.S., she was going to Brazil to a Vans Park series, and she happened to win that. And then ever since she won that, she skyrocketed in the skateboarding world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, Asian skateboarding, it seems to have just exploded.
Oh, I mean, yeah, like Japan's on point.
Yeah, that one. I saw that one girl, Funa, I think her name is.
Oh, yeah,
just front crooked the 16.
Yeah, Mama G, yeah, incredible.
Like, so what is coaching? If I was going to get a coach lesson from Willy, what does it even look like?
Well, that's a secret. You gotta hire me first, right?
Sure.
So I also work with Menestes, who rides for Santa Cruz, and so we went out to Brazil. We actually were out in Brazil like the last month and a half because there was a competition in Rio. So we went there for like maybe 13 days prior to the contest, because it's kind of like with the street, multiple people could skate, but the park is kind of hectic where it's really just like almost one person dropping in. So if you go in the competition and just like try to go there like just for practice, like that hour of practice you only have, you're probably only dropping in like 10 times with the other people that are skating.
Sure.
So that's why we go out to practice a little bit earlier. So, and then with the competition going in there, which was only like 3 weeks ago or something, and she got third place.
Wow.
So it was Sky Brown, Sakura Yosuzumi, and then Menestes. So yeah, it was such a blessing. Like, it was rad to see Mena get up there on the podium.
Yeah, you get to help.
And she's only 16 years old.
I feel like all of them are. You know what I mean? Like all the girls up and coming right now, there's the skill, the tricks that are happening from females in skateboarding are on a completely different level than they were even 10 years ago. The room for growth, we're seeing that expand drastically, and I think the Olympics in particular had a massive impact on that from my perspective, because you think of like snowboarding, women snowboarding, and there really weren't that many girls snowboarding, and then all of a sudden you see it on massive media like that.
Like when I was a kid, like 12, 13 skateboarding, when you saw girls skateboard, it was like seeing a unicorn.
Yeah.
And then now, like, you go to a skate park and there's like 5 girls.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I see them coming through my shop all the time now.
Right, yeah.
Which even 5 years ago I didn't, because I've been open 8.5 years. That was rare. There was maybe 1 or 2 girls in town that skated. Now it's often.
Yeah, so it's rad seeing them push the envelope.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just saying, this song that's playing in the background right now, I think that their soundtrack in particular is awesome at Skate Park at Tampa. It's like as hype as it gets. The song right now that's playing, I don't know what it's called, but it was the song for Rob Deerdeck in the DC video, which was the video I grew up watching all the time. What video did you grow up watching? What was your go-to when you were younger?
Oh gosh, well, you're dating me, so like...
you dated yourself earlier.
Yeah, Animal Chin, Pal Peralta video. all the 8 Street videos. Yeah, those were the ones that would hype me up to go skating.
What do you watch now to get you hyped up to go skating? Do you still watch full-length videos?
Oh,
or do
I
you move
do.
to socials?
But there's so much bombarded on the social media that it's like, oh my gosh, what do I? But the classics I always like.
Sure.
You mentioned, yeah, right. That was
Yeah.
a great video.
Oh,
yeah. All the girl chocolate
Yeah,
videos.
that was like the hard to argue it was the best video
Yeah, the
at
Plan
the
B
time.
videos. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, those were incredible. It's cool that you're doing the coaching thing. I think, as the skateboarding industry is evolving, it's becoming significantly more mainstream, which is good and bad and different, for different reasons.
Yeah.
But you look at every other sport, in the Olympics or whatever, and there's coaches. It's kind of funny that there isn't coaches.
Right, it's weird, because skateboarding is new going into Olympics, so they're all trying to figure out what
Sure,
the heck.
but I mean, just in general with brands and stuff, you have team managers and stuff, but it's almost, now that you mention that you're doing it, it's kind of clicking with me that it's kind of funny that you have these big brands.
Coach Willy.
For real, though, that there's these big brands paying these people to travel the world, right? The expenses are there.
Yeah.
It's almost surprising that no one has coaches for any of these things. Is that kind of what you're doing?
No, I mean, there are coaches now. Like Neil Mims is out here. He's
Sure,
coaching.
but I mean, like, that's the forefront of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I hadn't really seen or heard of that a whole lot until you mentioning it right now. That's got to be a newer thing that's going on.
Yes, it is.
Is that kind of a little bit of the role you try to play then with the people that ride for you as well?
It's just working out that way, like also maybe you're familiar with Vincent Malou.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he rode for Willy's workshop. So like him going into SLS, I was right there.
Yeah.
Because I discovered him. I was judging a contest in Colorado, and a French buddy, Marc.
I was going to say he's from France, isn't he?
Yeah. So a French buddy was judging there also, Marc Haziza, and then I was watching Vince skating, and I was like, wow, this guy's really sick. And I think at the time he was probably only 18. And I talked to my buddy Mark, and he's like, yeah, he doesn't ride for any board company. So Vince rode for Workshop for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think when I saw him, I think he front blunted El Toro or something.
Yes,
but it came out the same.
I was there.
At El Toro that day?
Yep. So to help him, do that, we went over to Poods, a park in Encinitas, and I told him like, hey, front blunt every rail here. So we did that, and we got there at the El Toro by like 12, and then he was scared shitless.
Yeah.
He had like, he's all, hey Willy, I'll be right back. I got to take a dump, and he went in the bushes and took a dump. Made him lighter, and then by noon 30, we have a thing called noon 30. So he Smith grinded it, I believe. Yeah, he Smith grinded it like maybe twice. And then Blair Alley was the one that shot it. And Blair's like, I think he already did the kickflip lip side down Hollywood High.
Yeah.
A few months before that. And then Blair's like, oh, it's only like 4 more stairs or something like that.
Sure.
And like the first one he tried, he made it all the way to the bottom. So he actually really could have made the first try.
Wow.
And then, like me talking about it, because being there, it was like my hairs were standing up, because like, man, you could really eat shit.
You stick at the top, you're done.
Yeah. But so I think he did it like 3rd try.
Wow.
And maybe if you see the footage, I know I posted on Instagram
footage,
too. Like he made it, and then I'm just yelling, running at him. Like, it was insane.
Man,
Yeah.
and what unfortunate timing that he front blunts that, which was groundbreaking, and at the same time the footage of the other guy backtailing it came out.
Bullard did a backtail.
Right, in
Yeah.
like the same general time frame.
Yeah, it was like really, really close.
I feel like to this day, he gets so underappreciated. Like, not that many people have even seen his stuff. Now he's on Pizza, you just put out a new part, but I still feel like he flies under the radar like really significantly. What in today's world, as far as growing a brand now, what have you found have been the most useful tools that you'd suggest other people to potentially learn?
Well, definitely with the social network, like the Instagram helps
Right.
with what I do. So I post on there all the time with me personally, Willy's Workshop, Couch Curbs.
Sure.
So, I'm not paying the big dollars going into the like Thrasher magazine, like to get in there sometime, but like it's free. You're putting it on Instagram right there, right? So
well, and that's a way you can curate and kind of develop a brand. What kind of brand identity is Willy's Workshop? If you're trying to like pitch it to somebody as far as who is it that's gonna really love what Willy's Workshop is, how do you pitch it? Who's it for?
Well, I definitely do, because I'm Filipino, so I do some Filipino-inspired graphics there for sure. And then I play off my old graphics from Birdhouse, because like with leaving Birdhouse, Tony, we sat down and he's like, Willy, feel free to use your old graphics for Willy's Workshop. So there's like a twist of stuff that I do with my old graphics to that, and then still
talk about
and new stuff too.
Talk about Tony being the man. He definitely didn't have to do that. That's really rad that he's just down to do that. So I always ask this on
Tony's amazing.
I always ask this on every episode of my show, because I think that when you do something you're really passionate about for a living, you get to have really cool experiences. Obviously, you've had a million of them traveling all over the world, and we've discussed a whole bunch of them. But can you share a story of an experience that you're really grateful for, but it only happened because you chose to pursue skating for a career?
Oh, man. Something cool, like can you explain
so
again?
As an example right now,
my job today was coming to Skate Park at Tampa, which I played on Tony Hawk Underground, to hang out with Willy Santos, who I got to watch in skate videos all the time.
You know, I was in the game Grind Session.
When was Grind
That was
Session?
like maybe a year after Tony Hawk's game.
Oh, when they're trying. That's rad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it wasn't as popular, but I was in a video game.
but it's the it's the whole thing of like when you're doing that. I was talking to this dude I interviewed a while ago, Wayne Hoffman. He's like a big illusionist in that realm. He's really big, and he told me you can time travel. This was yesterday. Me and him went and kicked it because I become friends with a lot of people I interview.
Okay.
And so when I came down, hit him up. We're out having beers, and he's like, "You can time travel." I'm like, "How's that work?" And he goes, "Okay, picture what you feel like when you're 72." And he like walks me through the whole thing, how your body feels, where you're at, whatever. And he goes, "Okay, now that you're 72, imagine yourself in the moment right now. Like how appreciative you are that your back doesn't hurt in this moment, that you're hanging out with the person that you probably haven't seen now in 30 years that you wish you could see again." And you know what I mean? And he was walking through the whole thing. And really all it was like self-awareness of recognizing how special it is that we're in the place and time that we're in.
Yeah, you know what I'm really grateful, like skateboarding, like I'm 47 years old now, and we talked about that video part that I did in 2015, and when I did that video part, I was like 35 years old.
Yeah.
And I was filming some trick, and then I felt kind of weird, but it felt like I broke a rib, but I didn't, but I just stretched something really bad.
Yeah.
And so from that moment, I knew I had to do something different to be able to still skate. And what I do regularly is like stretching, yoga, ab workouts, and skateboarding's kept me young.
Yeah.
I'm 47 years old, and I love skateboarding, and I still do it, and I'm grateful for it.
And I'm glad that the skateboard industry is so accepting of people that had an impact on it and realize that, hey, we can all be in it together. You know what I mean? And when they look to hire people for different things, you look at like Johnny Layton as an example, right? Ended up finding a career with Vans corporate after the fact. The fact that the industry kind of looks out for each other and like allows space for people, I think we need to be consistently, and I'm sure you agree with it, consistently looking for that when we're talking with anybody that has to do with the industry, rather than hiring whoever is the best based on whatever sales or whatever. The fact that we're keeping it within skateboarding as much as possible moving forward with every brand, I think keeps it in the right hands. You know what I mean? And I think it gives skateboarders like it gives them a future beyond, because it is scary, I think, and it's really intimidating knowing how many kids skate, where you're like, well, for me, I knew I wasn't going to be pro from when I was young. It was obvious. There were so many kids, you could see where I was at, and I'm like, that's not even possible.
Speaking of pro, it wasn't like when I started skating, I was like, I'm going to be a pro skater. I turned pro when I was 15 years old. Yeah. And it was just like, oh, here's your board. It wasn't like how it is these days, like a pro party or something, And you mentioned Vans. I had like 3 pro models in Vans, signature models.
Do you have like a back catalog? Did you keep a lot of those things?
I have some thanks to my wife. I know we skipped a few that we just didn't. She'll blame me because she's like, oh, get the magazine at Transworld Thrasher, but then it's like, oh, eventually I'll get it, but then
Yeah. No, see, when I opened, I didn't keep any of my stuff either, and I have two things in my house. Short stories about them, but one, the first like T-shirt that I sold, I pre-sold them before I opened my shop.
Okay.
Right?
Oh,
and
nice,
I didn't keep any of them, but one of my friends did and gave it to me, and so now I have that framed in my house. And then when I was 15 in high school, I designed and printed shirts that said "Build us a park already."
Oh.
And we sold them at our local shop to raise money for the skate park.
Nice.
And randomly came across one of those in my hometown, even though I made like 20 of them, 17 years ago.
And then you got one.
That's
one. Cool.
And
I mean, because I've been pro for such a long time or whatever, there's probably like maybe 10 boards that I didn't keep.
Sure.
And I wish I did. Especially there was one that was a graphics. My dad was in the U.S. Navy.
Yeah.
And him like graduating from the Navy, there's pictures, like a book, like almost like a yearbook.
Oh, yeah.
So I took a collage of that to make as a birdhouse board, and it was probably in 1994.
Yeah.
And that was one of the boards that I didn't keep.
Have you tried to go back and look for them on eBay and whatnot?
It is. I've seen it online, but not being sold. It was just like, this was the board.
You got to reach out to whoever that is and say, hey, it's me, Willy. I need this
I don't know
board.
if anybody has it. It was just a picture.
Oh,
so
sure.
it may not even exist.
Yeah, thankfully I kept one of each of my shop's boards year after year after year, and I do all the artwork on them now for my boards too, and I was I was aware of it enough to make sure I kept one. Okay, another thing, I think you learn fastest when you make mistakes, and ideally you can learn from other people's mistakes first, so that way you don't have to make them. What's a story of a mistake you made that taught you something valuable that somebody listening might benefit from?
Oh gosh, you're going deep here. Well, I mean, it's a skateboard trick. Like, I remember filming for. This may not even answer your question, but we were at EMB, and I was filming a backside tailside shove it. That's what I had in mind. That's what I was filming to do. But then it actually went a little bit further. So I was like, hey, Tony, I think I could do this. Backside, tailside, 360 shove it.
Yeah.
So my mistake turned into that trick, doing it. So I was the first to do backside, tailside, 360 shove it.
I mean, at the time, I feel like skateboarding was advancing so fast, and there weren't that many pros, and this was before Instagram, so it's hard to know if there was somebody out in the world that did something. No one would have known. Mm-hmm. You know, you got to see that unfold. Yeah. You were with your friends while never before done tricks were happening probably fairly often during that time frame.
You could even, there's another trick. It was funny. I was at the Rancho Penasquito skate park, and PQ skate park, and Wes Kramer was there.
Yeah.
He writes for Skate Mafia.
Yeah.
And then shortly, Dan Conley, who he runs Skate Mafia, he showed up too. And then Wes was starting to do frontside 360 heel flip up the Euro bump. And then Dan looked at Wes and is like, hey, Wes, you know who the first person who did that? And he didn't, because I don't think he was even born. And then Dan's looking at me, he's like, it was this guy. And so going to that backstory, I was going to Oregon for a skate camp, and I was still riding for GNS at the time, and I was doing a frontside 180 heel flip.
Yeah.
And again, one of them went a little bit further. And I was like, oh, I think I could do this.
Yeah.
So eventually I learned it, frontside 360 heel flips. And then I never filmed it, but then we were working on the Birdhouse video, and we went to 7th Street. I was there with Tony Hawk, Jeremy Klein, maybe Steve Barrow was there, and it was the perfect hip to do it, so it was in the first Birdhouse video.
Wow.
Frontside 360 heel flip.
Well, I always tell people you got to go with whatever's feeling right and working for you in the moment, and that's kind of anything in life. You don't have to go with what you had as a plan. If something else starts to feel like, well, maybe this is possible, just because somebody else hasn't done it or just because you haven't done it doesn't mean you shouldn't go and try to tackle it in that moment, because you never know. It might work. And I saw someone do a backtail 270 shove, 360 shove. I saw that earlier, and I'm sure they had no idea that was you either. Well, anyways, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Where can people, again, go follow you, get in contact if they had further questions, because obviously this wasn't a 5-hour interview. I'm sure there's plenty more things to talk about. If they wanted to reach out, ask anything else, and then how can they support you moving forward, whether it's going to your website and buying a couch curve or what?
It's basically Willy Santos Instagram or Willy's Workshop. We have a website for Willy's Workshop and also Couch Curb, so you could help support me over there. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Passion Pod. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you soon.